Hi, we'd like to check into your lovely Biltmore Hotel here in downtown Providence, Rhode Island.
Ray, tell him we want one of the haunted rooms.
Just wait. Right, no pets, no smoking of anything.
Right.
So, they say this place is haunted. Could we get a room on the 8th floor, maybe check out some of the haunted rooms?
I'm Jeff Belanger, and welcome to episode 74 of the New England Legends podcast. If you give us about 10 minutes, we'll give you something strange to talk about today.
And I'm Ray Auger. Thanks for joining us on our mission to chronicle every legend in New England 1 week and one story at a time. If you don't already subscribe to our podcast, you really should.
I do.
You can't beat the price either. It's free. Just head over to Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe.
And you can also do us a big favor by telling a friend or two about us on social media, or maybe post a review on iTunes. Those referrals and those reviews really go a long way in helping other people find our show. And we appreciate and read every single one of them.
We do. So, Jeff, the Biltmore Hotel in Providence is haunted.
That's what they say. There's ties to Satanism, stories of murder and suicide, ghosts roaming the halls, doors slamming, and even a hotel guest who disappears into the night.
Wow. So maybe that's why the Providence Biltmore was named America's most haunted hotel back in 2000.
It could very well be. But to figure out how that happened, let's go back to 1922.
The Biltmore Hotel in Providence opened June 6, 1922 on the southern corner of Kennedy Plaza in Providence. At 220 feet tall, it was the second largest building in Providence at the time.
This building is iconic. Locals know it by that red neon Biltmore sign that sits across the top of the hotel. And of course, the red brick facade is well known in the Providence landscape. You can't miss it.
When the Biltmore opened, it was actually part of a national chain of hotels. So there are Biltmore hotels in other states as well.
Okay, and the reason that this hotel in Providence was built was because of the financial backing offered by Johann Leis Weisskopf in 1918. Weisskopf had alleged ties to Satanism. And there's a rumor that part of the reason he wanted this fancy hotel built in this town was that so he could introduce his decadent faith to the stuffed shirts of New England.
There's claims he had chicken coops installed on the roof for a supply of birds for ritual sacrifice, and a hot spring dug in the basement for purification rituals. So when the hotel opened during the Roaring Twenties, Weisskopf could introduce some of the upper crust to his wild parties and rituals.
Okay, quick sidebar here. Today, some people claim Weisskopf had ties to Satanism, but Satanism as we know it got its start in 1966 with Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan.
1966 AD.
Yeah, as in just like 50 years ago.
Wow.
So LaVey Satanists are actually atheists.
Atheists?
Right. They don't believe in God or the devil.
Wow.
LaVey promised his followers a freedom from religious dogmas and guilt, and many people were attracted to that. The rituals and pentagrams are kind of all part of the show.
All right, so if we go back to 1922, Weisskopf couldn't have been a Satanist like we were thinking.
Right. Though people like Aleister Crowley were writing influential books back then, specifically the Book of Law in 1904, and that contained some precursors to LaVey Satanism, but it wasn't exactly Satanism.
But this is a time where society was changing drastically. Jazz music, booze, post-World War I, the dresses were getting shorter.
Right.
And everyone is loosening up.
And the loosest of society must be evil, so they get labeled with Satanist or devil worshiper or something else.
A tradition we proudly carried on in New England since the Puritans stepped off the Mayflower in 1620.
Oh man, old habits die hard, don't they? So anyway, I'm not saying Johann Leis Weisskopf wasn't into some weird stuff. He likely was. Just that maybe calling it satanic may not be totally fair. So where were we?
So when the Biltmore opened in 1922, the 20s were indeed roaring. But keep in mind, Prohibition started in 1920, so booze was illegal by the time the Biltmore was throwing those early grand opening parties.
But that didn't stop them. I mean, especially for the wealthy who could afford to rent out ballrooms, pay off local authorities. Right. And there were early stories that claim Weisskopf was throwing these bacchanalian parties at the Biltmore featuring nude waitresses. I mean, A-listers like F. Scott Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong were said to be in attendance.
The only way a place like the Biltmore can get away with these parties and the illegal booze is to put law enforcement on the payroll.
Of course.
To bribe and grease everyone to make this happen, you know?
Yeah.
The basement of the Biltmore was a well-known speakeasy where politicians and law enforcement didn't have to pay the 25-cent drink fee.
Oh, man. That probably keeps the heat off, and don't you miss those 25-cent drink fees?
Right? Quarter night.
Yeah, get me some of that.
All right. During the period of Prohibition, which was 1920 to 1933, some of the events that took place at the Biltmore were kind of deadly.
Oh.
There's a story of 6 police officers implicated in 8 different murders that took place at the hotel.
Wow.
They helped cover up for a governor who was accused of 6 sexual assaults and a murder. A mayor accused of one of the murders, a cardinal who drowned an 11-year-old prostitute in a bathtub,
Oh, my God.
and 5 others.
It doesn't matter if you believe in Satanism or not. I mean, that's just evil.
Agreed.
The next tragic event, they say, occurred October 24th, 1929. And that was a big, awful day for all of America because that was the day the stock market crashed. That, of course, was the day many fortunes were lost around the country and around the world. And rather than face poverty, there are countless stories of people choosing suicide over starting over.
I remember reading a story about how on Wall Street you had to wait in line at the window to jump. I figured that was just a story or an over-exaggeration.
No, I heard that too. But in 1987, the Washington Post did some reporting on that legend, and it turns out a few people did jump to their deaths on that day or shortly after, but only a couple.
All right.
It was not the mass suicide many made it out to be. And as for a report of a jumper from the Biltmore Hotel here in Providence, well, we couldn't find anything in the newspaper archives.
Yet, one of the prominent ghost stories people tell about the Biltmore is seeing a man fall by the hotel windows.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they run and look around the ground, but there's no one there.
Can you imagine staying in the room and you just see a body go by?
No.
That would be frightening.
Right.
And sometimes when you talk about a legend that's plausible enough, combined with a location that does indeed have a dark history, it's not much of a stretch to imagine the ghosts of a suicidal jumper, whether he did it after the stock market crashed or for some other reason.
Which brings us back to today.
The Biltmore Hotel in Providence has earned its haunted reputation over time. Guests may know a little bit about the history, they check in, and then weird things sometimes happen.
All right, what kind of weird things?
People report doors slamming, lights flickering, seeing a person walk by, but then no one's there. There's talk of disembodied voices, even disembodied crying. The accounts go on and on.
Is anyone collecting these stories from guests?
Well, I've been staying at haunted hotels for over 20 years now. And one of my favorite features of some of these old hotels is that sometimes there's a journal in the room. And if you're staying there, you can read through these entries and even write your own.
I love that idea.
So back in 2005, I stayed at the Horton Grand Hotel in Old Town San Diego.
All right.
I was there speaking at a ghost conference, so I was given one of the haunted rooms for the night. It was this great room with old dark wood furniture, this big glass transom over the door, and it had everything. It was like stepping back into the 1800s. And there was a journal in the room where I read several stories from guests about their ghost experiences right where I was staying. And they reported seeing a woman who would then vanish.
Well, did you see anything when you were there?
So not at first, but while I was there, it was about 2 a.m. We had just finished doing this ghost hunt in the hotel, and I was in bed. And suddenly I wake up and I see these crazy flashes of light popping through the room. It was like lightning inside the room. It was totally crazy.
Okay, did you think it was a ghost?
So I sit up, my eyes are wide open now, and I see more flashes of light before I realize what it was. So some of the eager ghost hunters from the event were out on the hallway taking pictures of the outside of my room with a flash, and the glass transom above the door meant that the camera flash just filled my room every time.
Okay.
So, good times.
Wait a minute. Well, I have a thought about the Providence Biltmore.
What's that?
Well, there's a place where people report all kinds of strange things about their stay in this hotel.
Where?
TripAdvisor.
Oh, right. So what did you find?
Well, a bunch. Here's one from someone who stayed at the Biltmore in October of 2016. Dave wrote, "We like older properties and heard this one is haunted. That might explain half the lights not working and the TV with no remote when we checked in."
Okay, well, that's something,
All
I
right,
guess.
yeah.
But here's another one from Eclectic Girl, who stayed in room 829 back in September of 2014. She writes, "There is a legend this hotel is haunted. I tried to brush it off until I was awoken at 5 a.m. to the sound of a woman sobbing painfully loud and growing louder until I turned on the light in my room. Then it abruptly stopped. I thought maybe the walls were too thin, but then realized that the way my room was positioned, I was near the elevator, and there was no room directly around or behind me, which is where the sound came from.
All right, well, that's kind of freaky.
Yeah.
And then there's one from Lori Kay, who stayed in room 1233 on June 23rd, 2014. She writes, my boyfriend and I heard the stories, but never expected to have anything happen to us. We went to sleep at approximately 9:30 p.m. because we had an early rise for Johnson & Wales. I was asleep, and out of nowhere, there was something walking above my head on the pillow, like a dog slowly stepping. It came around me and then over me. I slowly creeped to my boyfriend's corner of the bed and jumped off. I heard its nails on the bathroom tile. During the experience, I could not move and tried to yell my boyfriend's name, but nothing came out. Once it was gone, I turned to him and yelled his name. He was out cold. I woke him and asked if he felt anything. He got aggravated that I woke him. I finally fell back asleep around 5 a.m. We woke up at 6:15. I told him what happened to me. He's a skeptic, so I didn't think he would believe me. He stared at me when I told him. He said, whatever that was, it just stopped creeping up and down the bed in between us. He said it lasted almost a half hour and he couldn't move. He's no longer a skeptic.
Yeah, man, that would be...
That's a creepy one.
Yeah, that is very creepy, and that would be unsettling, to
Right.
say the least, you know? So what amazes me is that searching through all these reviews, there are a bunch that specifically mention they stayed at the hotel because it's haunted.
Would you think that would scare people away?
Yeah, not in my experience, though. I think a lot of folks want to have a ghost experience, but they want to have it someplace else, you know, like a hotel. They can go see the ghost, then they can go home to their good, safe homes.
Yeah, well, that makes sense in a very weird way. Yeah.
So when you add in the history, the age, and the look of this hotel, it just lends itself to a haunting. We're stepping back in time and putting ourselves into a place where many other people have had a ghost experience.
Well, when you think about the murders, possible dark religious rituals, and the ghost stories, suddenly I'm a little spooked.
Sweet dreams, Ray.
Good night, Jeff. All right, I'm guessing there'll be no sleep for us here at the Biltmore tonight.
I wouldn't want to miss a thing, would you?
I wouldn't, which is exactly why I subscribe to the New England Legends podcast for free on my smartphone. I want to hear each new episode when it comes out on Thursday.
Nice segue. Did you know we've put out a new show 74 weeks in a row now?
You know, I did know that, Jeff. I was actually there.
That's a good point. So if you've got a story idea for us or some feedback, we love hearing from you. You can call or text us anytime on our Legend line at 617-444-9683.
You can also join our super secret Facebook group full of other folks like you who love hearing about and sharing these strange tales.
Our theme music is, of course, by John Judd.
Until next time, remember, the bizarre is closer than you think.